thought it was all over.
Yeah, my name is Martin Ramos. I'm the owner out here at Kona Skatepark. I've been running things as a second generation owner since 1996. And my parents took the park over and reopened the park out of bankruptcy in 1979. And the park was originally built in 1977. So it closed for about a year, and then we reopened it in 1979. You know, the reason Kona opened isn't totally clear because it wasn't my family that originally built and decided to open the park. But at the time, you know, skateboarding was getting pretty popular. It was the late 70s. And I can imagine that we're looking at other areas in the country. There were skate parks available that have been built. You know, they looked at Jacksonville and figured, hey, you know, this is an opportunity to satisfy a lot of the surfer skaters here in this community. And thus Kona was constructed. Well, the process of starting the park, you know, would have been with the original, you know, owners, you know, that designed it and built it. But as far as reopening it goes, you know, there are a few challenges kind of connecting the original areas of the park, which were the freestyle, the bowl, and the J and the snake, you know, putting concrete in between those and then adding some newer areas to the park to keep it fun and interesting. All those were challenges at the beginning and just kind of figuring out how to make things work in the skate park. Well, as far as famous people and famous skateboarders coming to Kona, I think that's one of the things that's kept it around as long as it has, because it was one of the first destinations in the late 70s and early 80s for all of the California pros to travel to the East Coast and compete and come to activities. And so pretty much every famous skater that there was through the 70s and 80s kind of grew up coming out here for events, you know, especially like the most famous Tony Hawk. You know, this was the very first place he ever traveled to compete. And so there's like a who's who of famous skateboarders that have come through. And from the old days, you know, guys like Steve Caballero and Mike McGill and the Bones Brigade and things of that nature. So just throughout the decades, it's been kind of like a bucket list item for every pro skater out there. It's been kind of neat over the years when you look back to see some historical landmarks in skateboarding that happened right out here. You know, the very first, you know, vertical drop, you know, the dropping in, like what everyone talks about today. You know, the very first time anyone ever did that, you know, put the tail of their board on the edge and drop straight in, happened right out here. And the bowl on our Kona tombstone, which happens to have like 6 foot of vertical. So it's kind of crazy that the first drop in was on something so big, but that happened for the first time out here at Kona. And then we also were one of the very first people to create the vert ramp that you see people compete on. Like Tony Hawk is known for competing on a vert ramp, which is a variation of the half pipe. And the half pipe is exactly that. It's half of a pipe and it's just a U at the bottom like this, where a vert ramp puts flat bottom in it and pulls those two pieces apart. And so we were the first people to be able to kind of create that vert ramp out here as well.
My name is Tim Wood. I'm the general manager at Kona Skatepark. No, you know, I grew up skating here in the late 70s and early 80s. So being here is, you know, it's like being at home. You know, the Ramos family is like an extended family of mine. I've known them all for most of my life. I'm above 50 now. So I've known them for a really long time. And it's always just a great experience just, you know, coming back to doing what you love. I spent more than 20 years in the corporate world. And you know, it's really cool just to come back and, you know, there's something to be said about doing something that you love and, you know, and actually, you know, giving some life balance. You know, I think music and skating has always kind of gone together. You know, back when I was a kid, people would skate to synchronized songs that they picked specifically for their skate runs and contests and things like that. So I think just combining music and skating is just a natural match. And yeah, it's a really great opportunity to see a lot of new bands that, you know, you don't always get to hear because they're, you know, new upcoming bands that maybe don't get a lot of airplay. And then a lot of times we also get touring bands, national acts that are big names too. So it's pretty exciting to see those come through, and then to hear new music. So it's cool to get turned on to different music too. The skate community of Kona and the community in general is it's always been a really tight-knit community. Kona's always been one of those kind of magical locations where you make lifelong friends that, you don't always hang out with them outside of the park, but when you see them, it's always like, kind of never missed a beat. So it's a really cool place that just kind of has that inviting atmosphere to where it's a kind of a no judgment zone. Everyone's like super cool with each other. It's just a really cool community, and I think Kona's got a really little magical spot like that. Our 50th anniversary will be coming up in a couple of years, which I predict will be a pretty epic celebration, being the oldest skate park in the world, turning 50 with so many skaters who have come through Kona or who have at least, skated a couple of times and have moved on to bigger and better things. So I think it'll be a really nice celebration, and I foresee another 50 years after that.